Before we begin, let's name the mistake almost nobody wants to admit. Most disrespectful behavior does not start with a child's character. It starts with a child's training. Not formal training, emotional training, daily training, invisible training. A sharp reply here, a sarcastic correction there, a public shutdown in the kitchen, the car, the hallway, the checkout line. Then one day, the child gives the same energy back, and the parent is stunned. Where did they learn to talk like that? Usually much closer to home than anyone wants to believe. This is why intelligent parents are often the most blindsided, because they are trying hard. They are informed. They are responsible. They care. And caring people often assume that good intentions automatically produce good outcomes. But in family life, as in investing, intention and outcome are not the same thing. You can be sincere and still be building the wrong system. That is what this video is about. Not blame, mechanism. Because once you understand the mechanism, the whole picture changes. You stop treating disrespect like an isolated behavior problem. You start seeing it as a system response, a reflection, an echo, a signal. And if you stay with me, you are going to see something most parenting advice misses completely. Why demanding respect often destroys the conditions that create it. Why high-functioning parents fall into that trap more than anyone else. And how a subtle shift in emotional authority can change the trajectory of an entire family. Not through fear, not through permissiveness, through leverage. Picture a normal evening. You are tired. Your child is tired. The house is carrying the residue of a long day. You ask for something reasonable. Put the shoes away. Turn the screen off. Start homework. Get ready for bed. Instead of cooperation, you get resistance. A sigh, a stare, a muttered comment, a tone. And in an instant, your body interprets that tone as a threat to order. Your chest tightens, your voice sharpens, and what comes out sounds like discipline. Watch how you talk to me. Do not use that tone. You will respect me. Now pause the scene. Because the most important thing in that moment is not what you said. It is what your child's nervous system just learned. Children do not learn social behavior mainly from lectures. They learn it from repeated emotional exposure. They study power by watching how power behaves under pressure. They study respect by watching what respect looks like when somebody is frustrated, tired, interrupted, contradicted, or ignored. So when a parent answers disrespect with contempt, volume, or humiliation, the child does not absorb the noble principle hidden inside the message. The child absorbs the pattern. When you are stronger, this is how you speak. When you are annoyed, this is how you win. When you have authority, this is how you use it. That pattern becomes the child's private education. And this is where so many families get trapped. Parents think they are correcting disrespect, but what they are often doing is rehearsing it. Short term, this can look effective. The child goes quiet, stops arguing, walks away, cleans up, sits down. That looks like success. But silence is not always respect. Sometimes it is suppression. Sometimes it is fear. Sometimes it is a temporary market reaction to force. And force has a well-known problem. It works fast. Then it weakens. Then it has to be used again at a higher dose. That is not authority. That is dependency. Real respect works differently. Real respect compounds. It moves inward. It becomes part of a child's internal code, not just their external behavior. And internal code is built less by pressure than by repeated modeling. This is the difference between compliance and character. Compliance is borrowed behavior. Character is owned behavior. Compliance survives while pressure is present. Character survives when no one is in the room. That distinction matters more than most parents realize. Because if your child only sounds respectful when you are bigger, louder, or angrier, then you have not built respect. You have built a power response. And power responses are unstable. They collapse in adolescence. They collapse with peers. They collapse in adulthood. The child either copies dominance or becomes ruled by it. Now let's talk about why smart parents are especially vulnerable to this cycle. Because smart people love efficiency. They love directness. They love solving the visible problem. The child is rude. Correct the rudeness. The child pushes back. Increase consequences. The child resists again. Apply more force. On paper, that sounds logical. In a machine, it might even work. But children are not machines. They are adaptive relational systems. And adaptive systems do not simply obey pressure. They reorganize around it. If the emotional climate of a home says, whoever has more power gets to be less respectful, children learn that rule with astonishing speed. They may not say it out loud, but they live by it, with siblings, with classmates, eventually, with you. And when that happens, parents often make the mistake of interpreting the outcome as proof that they were not strict enough. So they become louder, sharper, more corrective, more controlling. This does not solve the problem. It scales the model. Now here is the part that matters most. Disrespect is rarely just a behavior issue. It is often a regulation issue. When adults feel challenged, their own state changes. Patience narrows. Interpretation hardens. Everything starts to feel personal. And when a child feels overpowered, cornered, shamed, or emotionally outmatched, their capacity for reason gets weaker, not stronger. That means the child is no longer in a state where values are being absorbed. They are in a state where status is being defended. So the lesson you think you are delivering never fully lands. What lands is the emotional experience. This is why so many parents say they know better, but they still do it. Exactly. Knowledge is not the missing asset. State is. A child can know the rule and still fail under pressure. An adult can know the rule and still fail under pressure. That is not a knowledge problem. That is a regulation problem. And regulation is learned in relationship. Children borrow our nervous systems before they fully build their own. That is why the emotional tone of a home matters so much. Not because parents need to be perfect, but because the repeated pattern becomes the training environment. This is also why modern parenting feels harder than many people expected. Not because parents love their children less, because parents themselves are depleted. They are operating under time pressure, work pressure, digital overload, financial pressure, and emotional fatigue. Then they walk into a family interaction already dysregulated and expect the child to supply the calm. But children cannot stabilize an adult-led system. Adults stabilize the system, or destabilize it. That truth is brutal, but it is also freeing, because once you see it, your leverage becomes obvious. The first move is not to control the child harder. The first move is to stop donating your own instability to the room. That does not mean becoming soft. It means becoming clean. Clean in tone. Clean in boundaries. Clean in consequence. Clean in self-command. A parent can be firm without being degrading. A parent can stop behavior without escalating the emotional temperature. A parent can say no without turning the moment into a dominance contest. In fact, that is what real authority looks like. Not theatrical power, not emotional force. Steady command. Children test loud authority because loud authority feels insecure. It leaks. It overreaches. It tells them there is emotion to fight with. But calm authority is harder to resist, not because it is scary, because it is coherent. It says, I see what is happening. I am not confused. I am not threatened. And I am not moving. That kind of authority creates safety, and safety does not weaken discipline. It makes discipline teachable. Now let's go deeper, because respect is not just about how a child speaks to you. It is about how a child organizes power, frustration, and dignity inside themselves. Watch a child who is consistently corrected with sarcasm. Sooner or later, sarcasm becomes fluent. Watch a child who is regularly overruled with contempt. Sooner or later, contempt becomes familiar. Watch a child who is managed through emotional intimidation. Sooner or later, they either become intimidating or they become afraid of anyone who is. This is why emotional modeling is not a soft topic. It is a strategic topic. It is the hidden curriculum of the home. Parents spend enormous energy trying to manage visible behavior. But visible behavior is often just the public market price of an invisible asset. The underlying asset is the emotional system. If the system is built on fear, you may get quiet. If the system is built on regulation, you get trust. And trust changes everything. A child who trusts your authority does not need to battle it constantly. A child who fears your authority may obey it in front of you and reject it everywhere else. This is also where the idea of repair becomes so important. Every parent fails. Every parent says something too sharply at times. Every parent has moments they would gladly take back. The question is not whether rupture happens. It does. The question is what the family learns afterward. In weak systems, the adult pretends nothing happened, or justifies it. I was tired. You pushed me. You made me do that. But those sentences teach the exact opposite of respect. They teach power without accountability. In strong systems, the adult goes back. Earlier, I spoke to you in a way I'm not proud of. I was frustrated, but that was not the right way to handle it. Let's try that again. That is not weakness. That is one of the highest forms of authority. Because authority without accountability eventually becomes hypocrisy. And children are exquisitely sensitive to hypocrisy. They can live with your imperfections. What they struggle with is your inconsistency, especially when your rules apply downward, but not upward. Repair restores coherence. It teaches that mistakes do not end connection. It teaches that power does not exempt someone from self-command. It teaches that respect includes responsibility. And those are lessons your child will carry into school, friendship, work, marriage, leadership, and conflict for decades. That is why this conversation is bigger than manners, bigger than backtalk, bigger than whether your child sounds polite at dinner. You are not just teaching etiquette. You are teaching a human being what authority feels like. Does authority humiliate, or does it guide? Does authority panic, or does it steady? Does authority dominate, or does it regulate? Your child is building those answers in real time. Now let's address the fear many parents feel at this point. If I stop demanding respect so aggressively, won't my child walk all over me? No, not if you replace aggression with structure. Children do not become secure because adults are loud. They become secure because adults are clear. Clear expectations, clear limits, clear follow-through, clear emotional steadiness. That is the formula. You can say, you may be angry, but you may not speak to me that way. You may be disappointed, but the answer is still no. You may need a minute, and we will talk when you are ready. Notice what is happening there. The parent is not negotiating the boundary. The parent is regulating the process. That is leadership. And leadership is exactly the right word here. Because parenting is not just caregiving. It is the earliest leadership environment a child will ever live inside. The same traits that make people trustworthy in business, in crisis, in institutions, in marriage, and in public life are built here first. Emotional steadiness, consistency under pressure, the ability to give correction without humiliation, the ability to hold a line without losing control, the ability to repair after failure. These are not decorative virtues. They are life outcomes. In every serious environment, the people who rise over time are rarely the ones who dominate every room. They are the ones who can absorb pressure without exporting chaos. They can disagree without contempt. They can hold standards without degrading people. They can remain coherent when the stakes rise. Children do not learn those capacities from motivational speeches. They learn them from repeated exposure, from the way you handle defiance, from the way you handle inconvenience, from the way you handle being disrespected without becoming disrespectful yourself. That is what makes this so hard and so important. Because anybody can look calm when nothing is being tested. What your child studies is what you do when something is. That is the true curriculum. So let's make this practical. The next time your child gives you attitude, do not ask only, how do I stop this behavior? Ask a better question. What is this moment teaching? If the answer is that the moment is teaching fear, volatility, sarcasm, dominance, or emotional impulsivity, then even a short-term win is too expensive. You are paying for immediate obedience with long-term instability. That trade is terrible. A better trade looks like this. Pause before reacting. Lower the temperature without lowering the standard. Name the feeling without approving the behavior. Deliver the consequence without drama. Repair if you fail. Repeat the pattern until the system changes. This is slower than intimidation, but almost everything that compounds is slower at first. That is why so many parents abandon it too early. They try being calm 3 times. The child still tests them. So they assume calm does not work. But consistency matters more than intensity. When a family has been running on emotional volatility, the child will often test the new pattern. Is this real? Is calm actually stable? Are the boundaries still there if the heat disappears? That testing is not proof the method is failing. It is proof the system is recalibrating. Stay steady long enough, and the child begins to believe what they could not trust before. Authority does not need to explode to be real. And once that belief takes root, something extraordinary happens. Resistance starts losing energy. The child no longer needs to provoke chaos to locate the boundary. The boundary is already visible. This changes the emotional economics of the home. Less guessing, less escalation, less drama, more clarity, more trust, more usable authority. And before we go further, if this is helping you see parenting with more depth and less noise, subscribe to the channel. Not for vanity metrics, for signal. Because we make these videos for people who want to build strong children through strong thinking. And share this video with one person you genuinely care about. Your partner, your brother, your sister, your closest friend. Someone with whom you want to build healthier relationships with children. Not to judge them. To strengthen the system around both of you. Now let's finish where this really lands. The biggest mistake smart parents make is not that they care too little. It is that they underestimate what children are actually copying. Children do not mainly copy your values as abstract principles. They copy your values in motion, in conflict, in stress, in interruption, in disappointment, in the exact moments when your polished philosophy disappears and your nervous system takes over. That is the real inheritance. So if you want to raise a child who can disagree without contempt, then they need to see disagreement without contempt. If you want to raise a child who can hold boundaries without cruelty, then they need to watch boundaries held without cruelty. If you want to raise a child who can recover from mistakes with honesty, then they need to watch you recover from mistakes with honesty. This is how respect is formed, not as performance, as pattern, not as fear, as internal structure. Not because the child was forced to look respectful, but because respect became the emotional language of the environment itself. And once that happens, your role changes. You stop asking, "How do I make my child respect me?" And you start asking, "What does respect sound like in my voice when I am tired? What does respect look like in my face when I am irritated? What does respect feel like in this home when a boundary is challenged?" Those are much harder questions, but they produce much better adults. Because one day, your child will be older, and they will be in conflict with people who are not you. A teacher, a coach, a manager, a spouse, a friend, a child of their own. And in those moments, they will not reach for your lectures. They will reach for your model. Automatically, emotionally, almost invisibly. They will use the blueprint they lived inside. That is the long-term return on all of this. Not a quieter dinner tonight. A stronger human later. A person who does not need disrespect to feel powerful. A person who does not collapse under correction. A person who can hear no without hearing humiliation. A person who can carry dignity into conflict and leave with dignity intact. That is not just good parenting. That is civilization at the household level. So no, the answer is not becoming permissive. And no, the answer is not surrendering authority. The answer is something rarer and harder. Regulated authority. Clean authority. Accountable authority. Authority that can say no without contempt. Authority that can correct without performing superiority. Authority that can remain steady enough for a child to borrow stability from it. That is how respect becomes real. Not when it is demanded downward, but when it is modeled downward, upward, and across the whole emotional life of the home. Because in the end, children learn what power means long before they can define it. They learn whether love and humiliation travel together. They learn whether correction comes with dignity. They learn whether the strongest person in the room can also be the most self-controlled. And that may be the deepest lesson of all. Your child is not just learning how to talk to you. Your child is learning how human beings treat people when they have the advantage. Teach that well, and respect stops being a battle. It becomes culture. And culture, once established, does what force never can. It lasts.